Proceed.
All right. Welcome. Good evening. I will now call the Equity Council Committee meeting to order. Pursuant to KRS Chapter 61, notice is hereby given that a quorum of the Equity Council Committee members, ECC members, a standing committee of the Fayette County Board of Education has scheduled its regular meeting via video conference as a special called meeting on Tuesday, December 14th, 2021, from 6:30 to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time. The meeting will be live streamed at fcpsnet.net/virtual meeting for the public viewing. In the alternative, pursuant to KRS 61.8262B, John D. Price Building, 450 Park Place, room 150A is hereby designated as the primary location of the meeting at which members of the public can watch the live stream of the video teleconference meeting and address the Equity Council Committee. And Ms. Scully is present at 450 Park Place, meeting room 150A, and she will now take roll in Mr. McLaughlin's absence. Ms. Scully.
Joseph Berry. Razik Elamine.
Present.
Dr. Arnold Farr.
Present.
Glenda George. Ariel Arthur.
Present.
Kamisha Boyd Powell.
Present.
Bob McLaughlin. Brett Nathaniel.
Here.
Talithia Rout.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Nathaniel.
Thank you, Ms. Scully. I'd like to welcome everybody who's watching online this evening, as well as those who are joining us in person. We're going to begin our meeting with a moment of silence, especially in light of the storms that hit Western Kentucky. It's good to reflect and enjoy this moment of silence. Not long enough, yet better than nothing. Ms. Rout, could you please read our mission statement, or the mission statement of the Equity Council Committee?
Sure. The mission of the Equity Council is to monitor and analyze equity issues, advise the Fayette County Board of Education, and advocate for achievement for all students.
Thank you, Ms. Rout. Next, we're going to take a moment to read our standards of practice agreements. And just for clarity, there we go. I'll begin by reading the italicized portion. As elected and appointed members of the Fayette County Board of Education Equity Council Committee, we accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students in this district receive the best education available anywhere in the United States of America. In accepting this role, we hold the pursuit of that goal as our sacred duty. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. We will
Place the interests of students above all others in every decision that we make. Dr. Farr, I think it's your turn.
Uphold all applicable federal and state laws and regulations.
just keep going. Just fill in where we're needed.
Abide by the
policies of, go ahead, Razik, please.
Abide by the policies of the Fayette County Board of Education, the Equity Council bylaws, and work with fellow committee members to recommend changes to those policies as needed to improve student learning.
Maintain an unwavering focus on the achievement of all students regardless of race, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, special need, or English language proficiency.
not use our positions for personal or partisan gain.
Model continuous learning and improvement in our roles as members of the advisory team.
Support a
Support a
strategic
strategic. Go ahead.
Support a strategic plan for the district that clearly defines success and accountability for the board, the staff, and our students.
Focus on the policy work of the board and monitor progress on the indicators of success in our strategic plan, leaving the day-to-day operation of the district to the superintendent and staff.
Base our recommendations upon available facts, advise our convictions, avoid bias, and uphold and support the decisions of the board once a decision is rendered by them.
Work to build trust between and among Equity Council committee members, board members, and the superintendent by treating everyone with dignity and respect, even in times of disagreement.
Maintain the confidentiality of potentially privileged information shared in collaboration with subcommittee members and district staff.
Recognize, go ahead.
Recognize that authority rests only with decisions made by the Fayette County Board of Education and make no independent commitments or take any independent actions that may compromise the FCPS Board of Education, Equity Council Committee, nor work of district staff as a team.
Refer constituent complaints and concerns to the Equity Council Chair through the Equity Council Liaison, Superintendent Designee, and then to the Superintendent.
Respect the leadership roles of the board chair, equity council committee chair, and superintendent.
Thank you, members. Please take a moment to review the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I will accept a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I move we adopt tonight's agenda for the meeting.
All right, is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur, and thank you, Ms. Rout. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Thumbs up or aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, that was unanimous. Motion carries. All right, October and November meeting or minutes were emailed before this meeting. And I know there were a couple edits that could have been made between, or were made to the last one. So any changes or corrections that need to be made since then that you haven't already contributed to the documents? Cool. I will accept a motion to adopt the October minutes.
So moved.
And November? Can we do both at the same time? That work?
You can, if there's no edits, you can go ahead and do them at the same time.
All right, we'll take October and November minutes. And I missed who made that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Farr. I'm just for the minute.
Kamisha was
Nope.
first, and
Thank you,
then
Ms.
Dr.
Boyd
Farr
Powell. I
second.
appreciate it. Thank you, Miranda. I missed it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. Thank you. We are, Dr. Liggins, thank you for being here. And we would love to hear from you. So here, take it away.
All righty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Obviously, I'm excited to be here, excited about the work you guys are doing, and really looking forward to the agenda this evening. I did want to let you know there's been lots of discussion with the board chair and other members of the board about the work the Equity Council is doing. And we want to really ensure that we're creating processes and procedures and putting those things into place as to how the work that you're doing actually in turn can get to the board and inform some of the work that they're doing. And so we have contracted with a trainer by the name of Deborah Keys Wright. She actually did a board training for the Board of Education and the superintendent as a team of 6 training earlier, about three or so months ago, that really resulted in us having a standard operating governance manual and a few things for protocols. And so what we've asked her to do is actually come meet with the board to do a training that's solely based on equity and how the Board of Education can work with the Equity Council in order to ensure that the board is really giving you a charge that is meaningful and that is aligned with your vision and your mission, and ensuring that the Equity Council truly becomes an arm, a detached arm possibly, if you will, that works hand in hand with the board itself. And so we'll be having that training actually in early March. And once that occurs, we are looking to having the retreat with you all. The same lady doing that retreat as well in May. And at that time, there very well may be a portion of your training or retreat that includes the Board of Education and myself potentially as well. But really, it is my goal, it's the goal of the board as a whole to really ensure that this is a high functioning team, that this is a team that is very impactful to our community and impactful to the work that we're doing. And so we're really looking forward to just making this partnership a lot stronger and putting some systems in place so that you all will know, have a charge from the board and yet still have a process for how it gets to the board, and the recommendations that you ultimately make are actually put into place. So that concludes my report. If there are any questions, I'm more than willing to entertain them at this time.
First of all, I would just like to say welcome. I think this is the first time that I've seen you at one of our meetings. I don't know if you've been at others in one that I've missed, but just welcome on behalf of the board and of myself. I'd also like to say thank you for what you just said. I feel like I think that that's a positive change, that you are working with the board to give us a clear mandate, a purpose, some direction, and I, for one, appreciate that. So thank you. I look forward to working with you, the board, and the facilitator in the future. So thank you.
All righty. Thank you. I appreciate the welcome as well.
I also want to thank you, Dr. Liggins, for providing that update, and that does sound like some exciting developments. I wonder when the board is thinking about setting their agenda, or I don't know if the facilitator will set the agenda for the March meeting, but just from the ECC perspective, I would welcome an opportunity for us to meet, maybe January or February, to kind of discuss some of the work that we've been able to do even just over the past year, and then heading into a full, a larger retreat with possibly the board in May, kind of to touch base and talk about maybe our component of what we might like to see those structures look like as well.
Absolutely. And if you will work through, I actually introduced Ms. Scully and Ms. Keys Wright, the presenter today. So if you will work through her, she will definitely be able to relay that. The consultant themselves is planning the training, but I do think you make a very good point that the board should know what it's the interest of the council as well when they're receiving that training. So we'll definitely make sure that happens.
Dr. Liggins, thank you again for being here. And apologies for my hasty intro.
Not a problem.
It is sincere. We are glad you're here. There was I think initially the retreat was to serve as an onboarding for new members and some old members who just realignment and all that. This is not, I don't know. I don't want to be, I would love to do the onboarding so that the know-how and just the protocols and praxis of this body can be understood I don't want to get in front of the cart before the horse. Is that an appropriate analogy? But waiting 5 months till May, is there a way to make that a more, not that it won't be effective, but an effective, even more effective time where we don't have to do the protocols, praxis, stuff like that, that we can hit the ground running when we do get to have a retreat with the board, et cetera?
Can I?
Absolutely. Anything you'd like to do is definitely an option. And I think you make a valid point. That is something that needs to be done, taken into consideration when you have new members coming on. I just thought when Ms. Scully and I originally talked about the retreat, I was a bit concerned because I felt like there was that disconnect between the board's charge and the work of the council, and where did that come together? And I thought having a retreat, because I did not realize it was for an onboarding type process, but I just thought having a retreat without first getting the Board of Education to clearly state, okay, this is what we'd like the council to do. This is how we'd like the council to come to us, and this will be the way we interact with them. I thought until that was done, I thought a retreat was a little bit premature. But if you're talking about a retreat as far as training new members of the council, this is how we operate, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that necessarily needs to wait.
No,
But go ahead, I'm sorry. Speaking.
What I would recommend is that in January, February, once the new members are on board, there is an onboarding piece where we talk about parliamentary procedure and meetings and then protocols along those lines, subcommittees, and then even making sure we're all on the same page of operating and viewing district work from an equity lens. So that's some pre-work that can be done prior to the May retreat that will be up for recommendation after we have the elections and we know who our full council is to move forward with that communication.
Thank you, Ms. Scully.
Can I just add one thing, Mr. McDaniel? I don't know if the structure will be the same if we're able to schedule something in January or February. I know that one we initially had planned for November was a kind of a 2-day structure. I would be in favor of maybe having a dual purpose where, the first part of it is kind of the logistics of, how we operate or, maybe even want to operate in the future. And it doesn't have to be a completely 50-50 split depending on, what takes more time, but us thinking together about, what we've been able to do over the year, and then even having, suggestions for priorities going into the next year and presenting that, to the board ahead of their March meeting, I think would be a good idea. And then, if we're able to meet collaboratively after that, together to discuss, all the priorities and things like that, I would be in favor of that too also. But I personally do need some of the other components as well with probably the onboarding and logistics. I'm sure other people do too, but
yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to mention that.
And Ms. Scully, I've heard you mention those things before. I didn't mean to ask Dr. Liggins, knowing that, but that was just, put it out there. So we've got lots to do and some very capable hands. And in light of an election happening tonight for some of us, not assuming anything. So, I might not be here. Who knows? So next, if there's no more questions for Dr. Liggins. Okay, next. Where did I go in my agenda? Ms. Morris, perspective from the board, please.
Good evening. First, I don't think I could say it better than Dr. Liggins, but I do want to commend Dr. Liggins and the board for really investing in this group. It is going to take time on your all's part, and Deborah Keys she's wonderful. So I'm very excited, and I feel like the way that we have organized our buckets, that's kind of the language that we're using for our priorities. We have a priority and we're kind of calling that our bucket, so we can better direct you guys as to, how we can, fill those buckets. So I think having the same trainer and her background, and she just looks at everything through an equity lens. So it didn't matter really what we were talking about. It all came back to the students and closing achievement gaps. And that's why we're all here. That's ultimately, why we're donating our time and our energy and efforts. And give me just a second. I swear they were quiet right up until then. So again, I just want to commend Dr. Liggins and the board for just acknowledging the work that you guys are doing and giving the tools that you need. And one of the things that I discussed with Dr. Liggins is I just don't see the bones or structures in place to really govern from this group. So we just want to make sure that we're honoring your time. And I've said all of that before. And one thing that I'm hearing from you guys that I do want to acknowledge is many of you have been here and likely not received onboarding because of the pandemic. So I think should be a priority for next year. And so I appreciate that suggestion. One of the other things that I think is going to be really, really beneficial from this is once we have the buckets and are able to need to give you a timeline as to when those things are needed, so our legislative priorities, we would need those by a certain time. There's just certain things that are coming up that we really need to do a better job of getting a calendar scheduled so that we can look at those things in a timely way and just, again, make sure that we're all utilizing our time to serve our community and better. So didn't have anything else to really add to that. Again, I'm just really excited and appreciative of Ms. Keys Wright for agreeing to do the work with us and for everybody, wanting to participate in this. Do you guys have any questions for me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, thank you for your support and the insight as well. It is helpful.
Thank you.
You have, previously when we've heard from you about the first board retreat, like extolling the greatness of Ms. Keys Wright was one of the things that I remember. So I'm looking forward to, I think, the consistency between from one retreat, development time to the next would be excellent. And if I don't know, certainly we all have scotoma, blind spots, but that's seeing through, for us to be able to see through another person's lenses or consider that the most marginalized or those who have the most limits, whatever it is, to the status quo. Yeah. So that equity lens, that's the goal of the Equity Council, right? So one of the missions. So for us to be able to do that and for her to see everything through the equity lens, I think that's not a bad thing to do all the time. So yeah, looking forward to it.
But we also have a governance manual and just protocols in place now that I feel like are really beneficial to the board. And so I'm hoping you guys feel the same way about the training and just talking it through so that we're all owning, the work that we're doing. So I'm hoping we all get to a similar place. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important, critical. My comments are, I look forward to all of that. And I think I was away this weekend, and while I got about a couple dozen texts, "Are you okay?" from people who know me that I live in Kentucky. They don't know where I live in Kentucky, but my heart and our heart. I know there are people in our own community, our own district, even though not physically affected because of the people that they know, and just even from an empathy, compassion standpoint, the folks who are affected by the storms. that we're still seeing the impact of that. It's devastating. As one who grew up in former Tornado Alley, as climate changes and pushes Tornado Alley to the east toward us, where the storm hit. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that, as most people can attest to. Welcome, Mr. Barry. So anyway, those are just some sobering events that I was grateful to say thanks for your concern to my friends and colleagues who don't know where I live, but there's just a lot needs to be done. And who knows, we might have a hand in that in some capacity. So, please tell me I wasn't muted that whole time.
You
No?
weren't.
Okay, thank you for that smile too, Ms. Scully. So we are going to move on to the subcommittee report from the Board Diversity Subcommittee. Council members Farr, Elamine, Arthur, and Boyd Powell. Would you kindly share your report with us, please?
Sure, we have a PowerPoint presentation that we developed that's in the Google Drive and that Ms. Scully is kindly sharing now. Appreciate that. And we'll let you know when to go to the next slide. I can go to the next slide. So as an overview, we all know coming into this subcommittee that as of the current school year that we're in, over 47% of the student population in the Fayette County Public Schools District were categorized as Black, Hispanic, or Asian. There is currently an achievement gap that does fall along racial and ethnic lines as well. So students in elementary schools identified as African American or Hispanic Latino had the highest proportions of learners at the lowest performance level. And those trends were similar for middle school and high school students as well. I can go to the next slide, Ms. Scully. And some more background, the 2020 Mayor's Commission on Racial Justice and Equality, the Education and Economic Opportunity Subcommittee, acknowledged some community concerns around education and diverse representation, and made some recommendations about the Fayette County Public Schools Board composition, as well as the importance of having diverse representation in leadership positions within education. So in response to those concerns, input from some current board members, as well as what we felt was our charge to respond to those equity-related education concerns of the community, in March of this year, a subcommittee was formed within the Equity Council Committee to address board diversity. And so we've met since May of 2021, and I'm sure you all have seen our reports in the Google Drive as well. We've met internally as a subcommittee, as well as with some community partners to develop some actionable recommendations to address this issue. Next slide. I do want to reiterate that among our subcommittee, we do feel that it's an urgent issue requiring multiple approaches. And apologies, just to back up a little bit, back to the beginning, I apologize. We are presenting these recommendations right now to the full ECC for consideration for feedback. So the language in the second bullet is the language that we would include in a formal recommendation to the board. But all of this right now is open to your feedback. So that's the purpose of us presenting it to you all tonight. So please don't be alarmed by that second bullet. As I mentioned, we've had some collaborative discussions, and they resulted in the following recommendations. Next slide. So recommendation one, we recommend adding ex officio member positions to the board to increase diverse representation. And we also recommend that one of those positions be reserved for a Fayette County Public School student. And so while ex officio members do not have voting privileges, we felt that it was an appropriate temporary solution to the current issue at hand, which is the lack of racial diversity on the Fayette County Public Schools Board. And we do think it's important to have a student voice as well, which is why we recommend one of those positions being reserved for a current student. Next slide. We also recommend partnering, that the board partner with the ECC and other community organizations to develop and diversify a pipeline of community members that are interested in running for school board positions. And so through our conversations with some community partners, we learned that leadership academies and some of them are referred to as boot camps are effective engagement tools to really raise awareness about existing leadership and advocacy positions that are available. We support just raising awareness about those opportunities and making sure that community members have access to the knowledge and skills to go for the positions and also succeed once they're in the position, that they have support to do that as well. And we're committed to recruiting diverse community members who are passionate about education equity, and we feel that the ECC can help play a role in some of that engagement and raising awareness about the various opportunities available for education and equity-oriented education advocacy and leadership positions. Next slide, please. Our next recommendation was that the board work with the district legal counsel to explore implementing statutory language that specifies efforts be undertaken to diversify the candidate pool to at least reflect the demographics of the student population. So the emphasis for this is related to the second recommendation, making sure that as many community members as possible and as a diverse pool of community members in Lexington are aware of opportunities to be on the board. And we also want to reiterate that diversity also includes national origin, sexual orientation, ability, gender identity, and English 5 members in support of these diversity efforts and reflecting the growing diverse youth population in the school district as well. Next slide. And we also thought it was important in reaching out and connecting with some community organizations. We thought it was important for the board to help support us in developing a stakeholder engagement and communication plan to help really build a foundation of kind of a two-way street of communication, building trust, making sure we make the community aware of our role, our work, and that we are able to have a broad reach with collaborative efforts in whatever that looks like through other subcommittees, through other charges that the ECC receives in the future, making sure we have infrastructure to help establish those relationships that extend the work of the ECC. And that also includes supporting the previous recommendations as well. Next slide, please. So that concludes our recommendations. And again, I thank our fellow subcommittee members, and the full document of the recommendations is in the Google Drive that's drafted in a document format, but this is a summary of those recommendations. And again, we welcome your feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur and Ms. Boyd-Powell, Dr. Farr, and Mr. Elamine. Lots of work. Thanks for the presentation. I remember it from last week when we did not meet, but when I got to see it, and I think it's gotten better. I don't know if you did any work on it. Could be just, I appreciate seeing it again. Any feedback, discussion from the council? I know the majority of us here were on that subcommittee, so you're probably like, yeah, ad nauseum already, right? Again, I appreciate your work.
Brett, do you
Dr.
mind?
Liggins, yeah, please, no, please. Oh, never.
I'm just curious to know what is the intent behind some of them, like the 7 members? Can I get a little bit of background knowledge of what the committee was thinking about that one in particular? And I may actually, if we can put it back up, if you don't mind, Ms. Scully. I'm just curious to hear the thought process that went into some of these.
So in particular, expanding the board, Dr. Liggins?
Yes.
So, and I don't remember which month this came up, but during one of our meetings, I believe maybe when we presented some preliminary, not recommendations, but a report from our subcommittee, we began to have a discussion about the growing population in Lexington, the student population, and thoughts that others had about drafting or proposing legislation to, or supporting legislation to increase the number of board members from 5 to 7. I don't, again, remember which month that was presented in, but that was presented to the subcommittee as a recommendation for inclusion or our point of discussion during one of our subcommittee reports. I don't remember if it was an ETC member or a board member.
I don't remember the month either, Ms. Arthur, but I do remember there being a reference to Jefferson County having just increased their, they have more than 5, correct? As the other, or another large school district.
Mr. Nathaniel, I believe I remember, I don't remember the month, but we discussed that they recently, but the 7 members has been, it's been there for a long time. I believe whenever and I'm probably wording this wrong, but whenever the city moved to encompass the whole county, I believe that's when they did it.
Okay.
A while ago, but they did over the summer, I believe, add a student position, and we definitely discussed that.
And is there that was probably when we discussed the CARA changes, the positive changes that CARA brought to, Kentucky Education Reform Act brought to all over the state. Diversity was a component in site-based decision-making councils, but not in board makeup. Is Jefferson County's, has that been addressed for their fairly larger than our 5-person board? Not. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Liggins, that question, is it?
Yeah, it's
cooks in the
answered.
kitchen. I'm
No, I was just really curious. I think if this is going to, and my next question will be about next steps for this, but I think if these are recommendations to the board, I think it's important that we iron out some of the questions that they may have at this time so that you're prepared to answer them. So if you don't mind going back to recommendation 1, I'm just going to try to go through each one. And this young member and university. Now, how does one propose, whether this be a student, whether this be an adult, or whether it be both, how do you propose this individual be chosen?
We discussed a couple of options. I think we started off maybe suggesting that it could be a member of the ECC, and then got some feedback that would probably be too much for one individual to undertake. One of the last thoughts we had was, opening up a call and having community members aware of the opportunity so that they might, apply for a position. We were uncertain as to, who would vote on that. Would it be the board? Would it be ECC, a combination, or some other individuals who would consider applications? But I think overall our thought was to have it be a widely broadcasted opportunity to the community, because the purpose is really to expand and increase the diverse representation and the voice of the community on the board. Feel free to chime in on anything I missed.
Okay, well, can we go to number 2 then, please? Yeah, I think this is already, there's already partners doing this one, so I think this one's fine. Yeah, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory as well. So what's number 5? We discussed that one
You
earlier.
want 4 or 5? You want 5?
5, yeah, we discussed 4 earlier. Could you speak to this a little bit?
Yeah, I can. So I believe this came out of our June kind of community partner meeting. So we met with a couple of community organizations, and one of the recommendations was, or one part of the discussion was that, you know, the ECC not necessarily having a strong presence in the community for people to understand our role, you know, what we do, how we might be able to amplify existing voices or concerns in the community, and understanding that, even relating this recommendation to, I think it was recommendation 3 about developing that diverse pipeline, understanding that it will take building a foundation of trust and connecting with people to start to talk about just the different components of taking on these roles, the importance, how people can make change in their communities. And we felt that a communication plan and stakeholder engagement or specific avenues for how we can be a part of existing efforts with the district of the board is something important for us to consider in relation to one of the previous recommendations, but also for other work of the ECC as well, or other subcommittees and future charters that might be given to us also.
So would support, am I right to assume support implies financial support and possibly some human resource support?
Right, I would think so. So one of the ideas with the boot camp or the leadership academy, you know, we have some community partners that said that they, you know, would be willing to participate in that, but I'm sure there would be some level of cost and, you know, some type of personnel support as well. You know, Ms. Scully is a wonderful support. She's, you know, one individual, but, you know, potential support as we start to branch out more into the community, hopefully, support to help coordinate some of those meetings, relationships, making sure information is, you know, disseminated in a kind of on a two-way street. That's kind of what I think you had in mind there.
Okay. And I think that was the last, was there a 6th or no?
I think it was, yeah, just 5.
Okay. Alrighty, I don't want to monopolize the conversation or influence it, so I will let you guys discuss before I say anything else.
Thank you for your questions, Dr. Liggins.
I did have a, or
No, keep going. Ms. Arthur, please.
I was gonna say, I did have a question. I think we talked about this a while ago. The process for, you know, formally presenting this to the board. We thought honestly it was important to bring this to the broader ECC for you all's feedback. And I think you mentioned that there would be a vote of our body to have this be a statement or the recommendations endorsed by the full body versus just the subcommittee. I don't know if we need to have multiple, I don't know if this would be a reading with Scully or Mr. Nathaniel, or what the next steps would be.
Your bylaws does not say that recommendations or any subcommittee reports have to be reported more than once. I think it's just when your council gets to the place where you feel it is at its final product, the council can make a motion for this to be presented to the board. And then we would have to go through the process of what it takes to get this on the board agenda. But I do appreciate Dr. Liggins' comment and questions for this to be opened up to get his feedback, and then also allow time for the full board to look over and submit their questions beforehand as well. So I do think it's a great idea to allow that space.
Is there any discussion at all? Because if not, I'll make the motion or I move to push this forward to the general counsel.
I hear that motion. Are we finished with discussion? If we're finished, great. I just dropped a question in the chat. I don't know if that's personal privilege or not, Mr. Berry. Apologies. But relative to we Fayette County Public Schools at some point had contracted with a lobbying firm, lobbying state legislators on our behalf. And I don't know I don't know if they still are under contract or what.
I can speak to that, or Christy can. I'm fine either way.
Dr. Liggins or Ms. Morris, whomever. Yeah, that's relative to
Dr. Liggins.
this. Yeah.
Okay, well, the board actually last night adopted their legislative priorities, and board expansion was not one of them. From my understanding, speaking with the lobbyists who spoke individually with each board member, the board is really focused this year on, there's obviously an effort to attack education, I guess, if you will, to really go after some of we have the critical race theory things coming up and a variety of things that are directly related to equity. So the board thought it best at this time to really focus on those issues that would be more impactful with ensuring equity in our district and their thought processes, rather than expanding the board at this time, because there's very well may be a plan from certain members with certain ideologies that are feeling like running for board at this time is what's needed in order to make a difference to stop critical race theory or to stop some of the work that this committee is trying to do. So, and I don't speak for the board by any means, but it's my understanding that they would much rather fight those things at this juncture instead of actually saying, well, let's consider adding people on, because more than likely there's that element and that community would very much push to have people of certain belief systems to run for certain positions.
Are we making a distinction between lobbying firm and advocacy firm, and/or is lobbying firm made public as far as to which exactly lobbying firm this might be that would be lobbying, so to speak, in that way?
Yeah, it's a public, that was voted on in public, and I don't remember the actual name of the firm.
Piper and Smith, I believe.
But our lead lobbyist is Abby
Yeah.
Piper.
Is Piper, or the lobbying firm, are there funding mechanisms made public in this jurisdiction?
What do you mean? What the district is paying them?
Well, whether it be the district, I would hope a district isn't paying for a lobbying firm, but whatever interest might be paying for the lobbying firm to do that type of work, is that a public type of acknowledgement?
Yes, it is. And it's Piper Smith. That's the name.
Where might I find the lobbying funding coming from Piper Smith at, online or otherwise?
You can look at the board meeting from, I think it was, let me look at my calendar really quickly. you remember which meeting that was, Ms. Morris? Was it the 27th or the 29th of,
I
I
doubt
think
it.
December 2nd. Look at the,
Standing meeting in
I
December.
doubt they would state their funding mechanism as a board meeting itself. Is there like a website that I could go to check their funding mechanism?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean when you say funding mechanism.
Well, if they're lobbying, then they're being funded by somebody to lobby in that way. And I was wondering how I track where those, whether it's grassroots type of donations or, who might be backing those types of.
Mr. Barry, we pay them. We've hired them to lobby on our behalf.
But they work with other firms as well, so we're not their sole provider.
Correct.
In fact, their lobby, she's also a lobbyist with the Kentucky Association of School Administrators. I know that's one other organization they're with.
If you all haven't read over the priorities, I was really pleased with them. It was a lot more thorough and equity based, and so when on the first read of it, I was very excited by the language, even just the first sentence of it. Just focusing on the fact that the state really is required by law to fund education fully. And so I encourage all of you to read it through. It was a very thorough document. I thought we did have the turnaround on it was pretty quick, but I was very pleased. I don't believe that Abby lobbied for Jefferson County, but she was employed for them or by them for a long time and helped them with policy. So her knowledge on funding and education and the conversations that I had with her were very impressive. So I was very, very grateful for the help on the legislative priorities. And I will try to drop that in the chat for those of you who haven't read it. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you want to call me up, Joseph, and just, we can always amend the legislative priorities too. But I think overall, you guys are going to be very happy with it.
Yeah, I want to get back to the motion. I made a motion to, adopt what Ms. Arthur had put forth, or at least making a motion to put that to the greater committee.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Is there a second?
I think we as a subcommittee would like it to be routed to the board through Ms. Morris for more feedback. I think that we would just feel more comfortable with additional feedback.
I would like permission to share this with the chair so that he can run it by our attorney. I think a lot of it needs to just get some feedback from both of those two. We've discussed this kind of back, not in detail on every single subject, but I at least have an idea of what you guys envision just from our conversations and meeting. And I was at the meeting with that I believe you were referring to with our community partners with the Pritchard Committee. And I do want to clarify, Dr. Liggins, I believe from those conversations with the Urban League and the Pritchard Committee that they would like us to help sort of promote when they do something, on our website and those types of things.
Okay.
I think there's been in the past some hesitation to get involved in board elections, period. And there are a lot of laws about them, but as long as we're not endorsing a candidate, just sort of maybe getting some excitement behind, the word and what the board does and how you do it and that type of thing is really what they were asking for, which I think would be okay for board members and the district to kind of support. Would that be okay with you guys to hand it?
So do I hear it's an amendment to the motion?
The motion doesn't carry.
The motion does not carry without the second or the vote. As part of the discussion. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Liggins.
I think one's just if you're open to feedback, I think all 5 of those recommendations are very valid recommendations that obviously someone took a lot of time to think of. It's been my experience with not just this current board, but with any board, taking that many recommendations is too many for a body to consider. So you as a body may want to consider, which would be a task within itself as well, to narrow it down to give the, to really hone in on a focus. That's just feedback, but you can obviously, if you want to send all 5 in, obviously they will take the time to do it. But I do know that usually 2 to 3 max is usually a good number for them to chew on, and they realize where your focus truly is and what you're trying to do.
What about submitting them in the form of a short-term, long-term plan? That way none of them fall by the wayside, but we still have a focus of maybe a couple that are more urgent, with the others on the back burner just for the time being.
Dr. Farr, was that for me or is that for the committee? I don't want to
Anybody.
monopolize the conversation here.
No, anybody actually.
I'm gonna let someone else speak.
I mean, I guess that makes sense, especially considering if, legislative priorities have already been set for this session, then it doesn't really sound like that's realistic anyway, for that to happen. I still would like, I think went back and forth on, developing those or including those. I still would like it to be mentioned, included in some way, to reflect some of the conversations that we've had both as a subcommittee, as a ECC, and with, community partners. But, perhaps, if you rank them or, designate that at least the 2 legislatively involved ones are, more long-term, then perhaps that would be helpful.
I would like to go on record, as a matter of process or otherwise, that I think that all 5 are valid. So that's just me saying.
Just
Thank
because
you.
you only emphasize 2 or 3 right now doesn't make the others any less valid. But I think that Dr. Liggins is right. You really should focus on the 2 or 3 that you feel are the most urgent and the ones that you think you can actually accomplish now. I know up at UK, I'm on several committees, and when we were putting forward recommendations, we might come up with a list of 10 that we think are great, but we also know that funds are limited, people's attention are limited. So we try our best to narrow it down to the 2 or 3 things that we believe can be accomplished, especially if there's any money involved, the ones that, the low-hanging fruit, the things that we know that can get done, and then regroup and come back and get the next group. It's a process, it's a marathon. And so I agree with what he's saying. Just if you can narrow it down, even combine some of your recommendations, I think it'll go a long way. So that's just my 2 cents.
Ms. Rout?
I appreciate that feedback from both Dr. Liggins and Ms. Rout. I do have a question for Board Member Morris about the, I lost it. Legal counsel, and I know you said that maybe the board chair would be able to have a meeting with legal counsel. Would it be possible for us to join in that meeting? Because I'm also thinking like maybe that would help us narrow down right there. Like, maybe there's something that legally we aren't really able to do at this time anyway, so we could just remove that from the list altogether. Or does that have to be just a conversation between the board chair and the legal counsel, and we'll have to get a report out?
Typically, the conversations, I think they would likely be open to doing that, but I'd have to ask them. But typically the way, just if all the board members were constantly, talking to the board attorney, our bills would go through the roof. So we've kind of agreed to bring, what our concerns to the chair, and he'll relate that, because you don't know if 2 or 3 board members have the same concern, but it's just to be efficient and use our resources wisely. So I think the best thing to do would to go ahead and send that to him, and he'd probably be open to having a conversation, I'm sure, with you guys. But I can't speak for him. I'm sure he would, though. But you know, he's not here right now for me to ask. But that's how I would see it going down. But so how would you all feel about that? To go ahead and, you know, just have him sort of massage it out with the lawyer and reach out to, would you all want to reach out to the whole equity council or the committee members, or how would we want to proceed with that if you did talk it out?
I guess I'm trying to understand if there are multiple kind of processes that we're talking about. So there's our recommendations being presented to the board chair, Mr. Murphy, and him discussing it with legal counsel. And then it also sounds like the recommendations, you know, being narrowed down and sent to the full board as well, and then coming back to the ECC for any edits and then going back to the board.
That wasn't what I heard. That you guys would kind of narrow down your focus and then hand that off to Chair Murphy to discuss with our board attorney, Mr. Salisbury.
But I also heard from FAR that it was also possibly keep all 5 and have some short-term versus some long-term.
Okay.
And I believe it was Ms. Boyd-Powell who mentioned seeing if there are some that combine after we talk to legal counsel. So, maybe we've only got 2 or 3 already.
So several options on the table.
I'm awaiting a motion, or are we discussing this, right, Ms. Scully? So we're waiting. Ms. Morris has asked the question, like, do we, right?
I think you let all those suggestions go back to the subcommittee and let them determine what's going to be the best route of action, and they can reach back out to the full council for feedback as needed as they move forward. But I think they have some questions and a few things to take back and discuss. Ms. Arthur, Dr. Farr, Ms. Boyd-Powell, Mr. Elliman, is that agreeable, or did you want to go additional direction right now, a different direction right now?
I guess, you know, ultimately it might be, you know, up to our subcommittee to check in and make a recommendation on how you want to move forward. I just want to be clear on what the pathway is, because, you know, I won't speak for my fellow subcommittee members, but I personally kind of want this out of our hands in terms of it feeling like it's going to a next step. I know in previous reports we've had, this is the furthest we've gotten in terms of having concrete recommendations, and this is the first time we presented them. So I'm okay with not, you know, presenting all 5 right now directly to the board as a formal recommendation. But I guess I'm thinking about the timeline and what that would look like in terms of having input from legal counsel. After that, you know, what happens after that? And if you all are saying that we would decide or put forth the recommendation on what that process is, maybe that's okay. Our subcommittee can come back together and put that forth. But I just want to make sure we're not just stalling, I guess.
Yeah, if just for, I guess, a bit of levity, the fact that we have 3 choices now to what to do with the 5, and we're having that hard of a time narrowing it down. Imagine taking the 5 to the board and then narrowing it down to 1 or 2 to choose. So that was kind of my point, because it's a lot to chew on. And that was, again, it's a suggestion. If you guys are comfortable with sending all 5, I think Barry's comfortable with that. That was just a suggestion. I mean, I want you guys to feel like you comfortable with the decision that's ultimately made. And I definitely don't want to, my voice here has no more authority than anyone else's. I'm simply a member of the team trying to help out.
My suggestion was that we allow time for this to route back to the board, back to Tyler, for him to get that legal counsel on before recommending it as a final product.
To determine if perhaps there may be a shrinking of the recommendations.
Last thing I'll add now, I know this can't necessarily be voted on or dictated, but I just personally would like to see or be able for the ECC to vote on the formal recommendations, however many there are, during the January meeting. That, to me, that would be ideal. If, you know, just a goal I want to put out there.
Is that a procedurally or whatever, is that feasible? I mean,
That's
Ms. Morris?
I believe that's feasible if we know, if you're wanting to send all five, and then if you guys want to narrow it down, then I suppose that will depend on you kind of getting together and working that out. But I do think that is feasible.
Even though our January meeting is fast approaching in light of this being a week, our meeting currently being a week later, and there being a massive holiday in between now and then. I'm encouraged that you think it's feasible. Sweet. And Ms. Arthur, I affirm and yeah, amen on being as urgent as we can.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Ms. Arthur, in terms of timeline.
Great. Is there a motion for that suggestion?
What are we making? I don't think I understand what we would be making the motion for.
The way I'm understanding it, and wide open, please correct me, especially you four subcommittee members, but a motion to send the recommendations as they are to, by way of Ms. Morris, or, right, if that's appropriate, to Mr. Murphy for him to engage with Mr. Salisbury, FCPS legal counsel, to determine the viability and legality of said recommendations, to see if there's any that filter out and make it 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. And if they're viable, all 5. And then it's back to us to, or rather you and us to determine how many we send. That was so inefficient word-wise. But do you understand, Mr. Alameen? You want to make a motion that sounds and is better?
Yeah, I do understand. I think I understand. I'm still digesting it. Trying to think of how I would make a motion for that. I guess I could just say I make a motion for Board Member Morris to take our recommendations as is to Chairman Murphy and present them to legal counsel for the district. Does that work?
Would you like to add a timeline?
Oh, yes. Well, I don't actually know what timeline we can, expect, since it's the legal counsel that would
ASAP?
be in
Time
there.
for us to be able to vote on at our January meeting, if possible.
Yeah.
Respectfully, humbly.
Yeah, so as soon as possible, I guess. I mean, that kind of leads me to a question as well. What is the turnaround time usually like when you bring something to the lawyers?
I think the motion should be with the request to bring it back before the next meeting, and I think we can make that happen.
Okay. All right. Do I need to say that all over again, or does that work?
said it again.
Could you
Based
say
on
it
what
again
Dr.
for
Ligon said, his
minutes?
name.
Yes, I make a motion for Board Member Morris to present the Board Diversity Subcommittee's recommendations as is to Chair Member Murphy, and have him present those to Legal Counsel of Fayette County Public School District, and then have the Fayette County, or the Legal Counsel of the Fayette County Public School District provide feedback prior to our January meeting for the Equity Council.
Just in case, I mean, since I'm here and not Mr. Salisbury or Tyler, could we say request and leave the timeline a little bit more open just until we know for sure?
Mr. Elamine, as the offerer of that motion, is that okay with you to put that request language in there? Request.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a second for Mr. Elamine's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Farr. All right, all in favor of sending the recommendations to Mr. Murphy by way of Ms. Morris to get feedback from Fayette County.
I want some clarification. Now, does that mean open-ended, or you mean like before next meeting, by next meeting, within a month or two? That sounded very open-ended to me, but maybe I'm tripping.
I just appreciated the wording that Dr. Liggins used. I believe he used the word request to have it done. And I believe that we can make that happen, but just in case, kind of a rigid timeline makes me nervous. So that was just my suggestion.
When I heard Dr. Liggins say, I think we can get that done, it leaves Mr. Berry to your concern. It gives me a little hope, or I'm more hopeful. And based on Ms. Morris's feedback, I think that, yeah, maybe it's received better and acceded to our demands more quickly. Request. So all in favor, give me a thumbs up or an aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Board Member Morris and Dr. Liggins, and especially Board Diversity Subcommittee members for your work and input. Look forward to maybe, well, at least I'll be paying attention to see what happens in the January meeting, depending on what happens now, how much I'll be involved. Next on our agenda is new business. At this time, we will move forward with the voting process for 6 community-based members. The 6 members elected tonight will serve a 2-year term through December of 2023. And as 2 of our members we're replacing, there are 3 opens, there are 2 open spots right now, and Ms. Glenda George has opted not to run again. Thank you to Ms. George and Ms. Gillespie and Dr. Jenkins for their time and service to this body through a pandemic and all the other stuff. They gave great input and help, so we're grateful for them and others like them, like you, as we go forward. Before we are able to vote, I will need oh wait, did I skip something? Apologies. Yeah, before we are able to vote, I will need a motion to accept the voting process previously sent to the council that it adheres to Robert's Rules of Order. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Okay.
Was that Mr. Berry? I didn't hear. Yes, thank you, Mr. Berry and Ms. Powell. All in favor? Say aye. Or show of hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Brown. All right, no opposition, motion carries. I will ask that everyone refer to the ballot received via email. I believe it was put in the chat earlier by Ms. Scully. I will ask everybody, applications to serve on the Equity Council Committee were received from the following candidates: Ariel Arthur, Kamisha Boyd Powell, Dr. Anthony Everett, Dr. Antonia Farrell, Dr. Devrin Muff, Selena Mustafa Campbell, Brett Nathaniel, and Kennedy Wells. In accordance to our bylaws, nominations closed the last business day in October, and there are no nominations allowed from the floor. May I have a motion to close the nominations and accept the ballot candidates?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Is there a second?
One second.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur. All in favor, say aye or show a hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. I will now turn the floor over to our acting secretary and the bomb liaison from the Equity Office, Ms. Miranda Scully, and ask that we take vote by roll call. Each council member will now be called by name and asked to cast their 6 votes by stating the candidate's name. Once every council member in attendance has cast their vote, the election shall end.
Does every
Ms.
council, thank you, Ms. Nathaniel. Does every council member have the ballot in front of them and can see all the applicants?
Yes.
Okay, so I
Do
will
you
go.
mind sending that by email once more? It's not pulling up on my computer for some reason.
Okay. Quick pause for a second, and I will get that to you. Does anyone else need access to that? Okay. All right. I will go in the order of Joseph Berry, Razik Elamine, Arnold Farr, Glenda George, Ariel Arthur, Kamisha Boyd Powell, Bob McLaughlin, Brett Nathaniel, and Talithia Rout. When I state your name, if you would identify your 6 votes, and then we'll go in that process, okay? Mr. Berry, if you are ready, if you could state the name of your 6 votes.
Yeah. Arthur Boyd Powell, Farrell, Mustafa. You said all 6, you said?
Yes, you've done 4. 2 more?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would go with Wells and Nathaniel.
For clarification of record, I'm stating last names: Arthur Boyd Powell, Farrell, Mustafa Campbell, Nathaniel, and Wells.
Yeah.
Thank you. Razik Elamine.
I can't confirm that mine will be in order.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's
All
fine.
right. Arthur Boyd Powell, Nathaniel, Mustafa Campbell, Farrell, and Muff.
What was the last one?
Muff.
Mustafa Campbell?
I did say Mustafa
Muff,
Campbell and then Muff.
Okay. For clarification, stating the last names: Arthur Boyd Powell, Farrell, Muff, Mustafa Campbell, Nathaniel, and Wells. I'm
Yes.
sorry, Nathaniel, not Wells. Sorry.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought I heard you say Nathaniel. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Arnold Farr, Dr. Farr.
Yeah. Arthur Boyd Powell, Nathaniel, Everett, Farrell, and Wells.
For the record, Arthur, Boyd Powell, Everett, Farrell, Nathaniel, and Wells.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Ariel Arthur,
Boyd Powell, Farrell, Muff, Mustafa Campbell, Nathaniel, and Wells.
one more time, please.
Boyd Powell, Farrell, Muff, Mustafa Campbell, Nathaniel, and Wells.
Okay. For the record, Boyd Powell, Farrell, Muff, Mustafa Campbell, Nathaniel, and Wells.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Kamisha Boyd Powell,
Ariel Arthur, Kamisha Boyd Powell, Dr. Anthony Everett, Dr. Devin Muff, Brett Nathaniel, and Kennedy Wells.
for the record, Arthur, Boyd Powell, Everett, Muff, Nathaniel, and Wells.
That's correct.
Thank you. Brett Nathaniel, you're muted.
Apologies for delaying this. Ariel Arthur, Kamisha Boyd Powell, Anthony Everett, Devin Muff, Salima Mustafa Campbell, Mustafa Campbell, and Brett Nathaniel.
For the record, Arthur, Boyd Powell, Everett, Muff, Mustafa Campbell, and Nathaniel.
Correct.
Thank you. Talithia Rout,
Sorry, forgot I was on mute. Ariel Arthur, Kamisha Boyd Powell, Dr. Antonia Muff Farrell, Dr. Devin Muff, Brett Nathaniel, and Kennedy Wells.
all right. For the record, Arthur, Boyd Powell, Farrell, Muff, Nathaniel, and Wells.
Yes.
Have I missed anyone present tonight? Okay. That will, with the last vote being cast, election will come to an end. I am going to tally and hopefully have a response for you by the time you get through public comment.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Scully. Sorry, I just lost the spot. Now is the time for public comments. I get to read this thing. Actually, is there anybody present? Ms. Scully, apologies for the tabulation interruption, but do we still need to read this? I'll read it by time for you, but is there anybody there anyway?
I was hoping you would read it to buy me time to tally. The one time.
Okay, well, I'll read it. I'll read it then. Let it be read. Alrighty then. Next on our agenda is the time for remarks by citizens, stakeholders of Fayette County Board of Education Policy 0145 states, 01.45 states, members of the public may address the board during the period set aside by the board without submitting an item for the agenda. No action shall be taken during this portion of the meeting on issues raised by employees or the public unless deemed an emergency by the board. Please be mindful that this is a public broadcast. Speakers may be muted or removed from the meeting for profane or obscene language or other behavior that is not appropriate for a public meeting. Speakers will not be allowed to make any disparaging or critical remarks about individuals or employees of the district. Critical comments and complaints are processed through the district's complaint procedures, which affords the individuals to whom comments or complaints are directed the opportunity for response and due process. If disparaging or critical remarks about individuals are made, speakers will be immediately muted and removed from the meeting. At this time, members of the public who may have just appeared in room 150A are invited to speak. This is not intended to be a time for debate, but the council will take public's input into consideration. Respectfully ask for each speaker to keep their remarks to less than 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry I couldn't have added another line or two. Ms. Scully, how are the tabulation?
Ready.
All right. I will now turn the floor back over to Ms. Scully to hear the voting results. Please note the official confirmation and invitation to join the Equity Council Committee will come from myself as council chair. Ms. Scully, can you please share with us the candidates with the most votes?
We had 6 elected seats. The 6 candidates that will be invited to join the Equity Council will be Area Author, Kamisha Boyd Powell, Dr. Antonia Farrell, Dr. Devin Muff, Brett Nathaniel, and Kennedy Wells. We will keep record, we have record via recording, and I will also keep the tally sheet available in case there are any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Scully. Congratulations to the returning and the newly elected council members, Mr. Wells, Ms. Mustafa Campbell. Oh, sorry, I'm messing that up.
Area Author, Kamisha Boyd. To the new members would be Dr.
New members
Antonia
would be-
Farrell, Dr. Devin Muff, and Kennedy Wells.
Thank you. I apologize. Apologies to Ms. Mustafa Campbell for not saying that right. But yes, to the new members, congratulations and thank you to all who invested the time and effort to enter your name in the election. So I'll be following up with a letter of invitation to all of the elected council members. It is the end of the year. There is a break, and I hope you're able to, all of you, my fellow council members, as well as those who are joining us tonight, are able to take advantage of the rest and in preparation for a year that has lots of hope in it, even as Omicron continues to advance and pandemic changes things in ways that we've never imagined. So look forward to working with you all in the future. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn at 8:06 p.m. on the 14th of December 2021?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd Powell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Elamine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We out.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Appreciate you.
Take care.
Holidays.
Thank